think we're going to get this party started. In other words, we're going to gavel in to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Welcome, everyone. First, we'll do introductions, starting with Mr. Peterson.
Pete Peterson.
Joey Sweet.
Robin Dern.
Felix Rivera.
Meg Zalato.
Scott Myers.
It is I, Daniel Voland.
I think he's happy to be here. Christopher Constant.
This is Austin Quinn Davidson, and Scott Myers, I'll note, is a member-elect, along with,
Anna Brawley, member-elect.
great, and from the administration?
Grant Utrinka, CFO.
Glenn Cibriano, Deputy Treasurer.
Alden Thurn, Finance Department.
Mario Bird, Acting Chief of Staff.
Thanks, Mario. And we have Desiree Camacho here as well, and a bunch of folks, maybe all from the administration. Oh, and Mike Edgington in the back. Thank you. And on the phone?
And I'm on the phone, Madam Chair.
Yep, so that's Ms.
Suzanne
LaFrance. And Mr. Cross, you're on the phone as well?
On the phone and in the sun. Thank you.
Oh, trying to make us jealous. Okay, thank you. I had asked Mr. Trombley to do an update on ARPA and where we are. It's been since August, as Mr. Rivera reminded me, that we did the appropriation for the tranche 2 of ARPA, which was just over $50 million. And obviously, Mr. Trombley is gone, but Trista, it's at you. Okay, great. We have Trista here from the mayor's office, and also Mario, and I think they're going to run through an update on where we are with ARPA. And you all should have received an email from Desiree showing the distributions of some of the funds and some left to be distributed. So did you want to do a short summary, sort of a where we are with that, and any hiccups you found, or any exciting stories or things you want to share, and just kind of where we are? Thank you.
Perfect. Sure. Either one. There we go. Okay, through the chair. So what you guys are all currently looking at is all. Oh, sure. Sorry, I'm Trista Espy. I'm the community engagement director in the mayor's office, and I also am overseeing ARPA. Okay, so the form that you're currently looking at, this is a per AR and the AR section of all ARPA 2 subrecipients. Just starting from the top end, I have them organized by the AR section and the AR number that they were given out on. It has the amounts, if they've been paid, the date they were paid, and if they have not been paid, where they are at in the current process. I'm happy to answer any questions. The spreadsheet is pretty basic but self-explanatory. If you have any questions on any of them, I'm happy to answer. Since starting a couple of months ago, I picked up on ARPA from the individuals that were working prior to this, and just have been working on the grant agreements with our contractor, Denali FSP, and working to pay out these disbursements and get all the required information required with these grant agreements.
Can I ask you a quick question? I can't remember what the bottom said, but approximately what percent roughly of the funds have been distributed? Oh, it doesn't have a total down there, does it?
It does not. So the total for ARPA Tranche 2 is just over 51 million. I think, I can count them out for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And don't feel
25-ish still need paid out.
25 grants. So
yes,
we're not sure. And that was out of 70 or something. I can't remember, but so we're not sure the amount. Maybe you could total that up for us, just so we know how much money is left to be appropriated or granted. But
sure,
Mr.
I can do
Rivera,
that.
go ahead. And then Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So I have a concern and a question. So at the sort of close to the end of the list, one of the things that was fairly glaring to me There are two community organizations, nonprofits that serve the Pacific Islander community, the Polynesian Association of Alaska and Pacific Community of Alaska. One of them got their grant paid out on November 30th. The other one still has not gotten their grant paid out. So that, to me, frankly, the optics of that aren't great. Why is one getting paid so quickly and the other one still waiting? So I know it says on here, DocuSign completed in shopping cart phase, but can you just confirm if Pacific Community of Alaska is going to be getting their grant award soon?
It is my hope that all grant subrecipients receive their money very quickly. In terms of optics, what happens when they receive their grant agreement is our contractor, Denali FSP, works with them, gives them their grant agreement, and then they have to provide back to us specific insurance, specific information in accordance with that grant agreement. So I can't necessarily speak specifically to whichever one of these line items you're speaking to, but that is the process. So once we get that back, I've been trying to work with our contractor once we get that information back to expeditiously push this through DocuSign, shopping cart, and get these paid out. Unfortunately, I wasn't here in November, so I can't speak specifically to what my predecessors did in this instance, but as long as they've sent in their information, I have been working to get this sent through DocuSign, shopping cart, and then paid out.
Perfect. Yeah, I really appreciate your work on getting this done expeditiously.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you for sending the spreadsheet too. This is more information that we've had on these grants. So we really appreciate you being here. Mr. Peterson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was wondering if you could define what it means when it's in the shopping cart phase.
Sure. So the internal process for paying out any disbursements or any type of funding is that first there's a DocuSign created. It goes through all the internal departments, including the grant. The subrecipient signs that. They send that back to us. Then it goes to risk management to ensure that all of the requirements are met. It goes through our legal department to make sure that the grant agreement and everything is legally sound. And then it also goes through the municipal manager. Once that's the DocuSign is completed, then we can then move to the next step, which is creating the shopping cart. And then in that shopping cart, you upload the grant agreement and the required documentation, which then pushes it through to purchasing. And then that's just one step in the internal municipality of Anchorage process for getting things paid.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Rivera, to your question. I met with Taffy about 6 weeks ago and found out that they hadn't really received any opportunity to make the final process get moving. And at that point, I reached up to the purchasing department and they started to get funding going. And this is substantial progress compared to where we were 6 weeks ago. And so I can't speak to the why one organization received their process very swiftly to the other. I just can't speak to it, but I think there's some implications.
Anna's in the queue. Do you want to go after, or do you want to respond to Mr. Constant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. And I think Taffy also reached out to a few folks because I think she was very concerned. So her and I also talked. And so I think jointly we all took it from different angles. Thanks.
I spoke with that person as well and just let them know where they were at in the process and to reach out if they have any further questions.
Great. Thank you, Trista. Go ahead, Ms. Burley.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a question. There's a that say no response, and I know there's that's obviously different circumstances, I'm sure, but I'm just curious what the time frame what that was.
Sure. So I think there's 2 or 3 that say no response, meaning that we have not been able to get in touch with them to speak with them about their grant agreement. Our contractor has not received any response from them whatsoever.
Okay. And I just wondered, I just wanted to flag, is it possible that it's like turnover in that organization, or maybe they're contacting an old contact at the Muni, or?
This is the contact information from my understanding. Whenever the assembly, from my understanding with ARPA, the applications went through the assembly and then the assembly chose the subrecipients. That's my understanding. So the information that we have for the contact would be the contact that was on their application.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to note we've been joined in person by Ms. LaFrance, and I have a question for Mr. Volant.
I'm looking at the Girdwood Inc. and the South Edition pieces. I think those are those going to, well, actually, Mike might be able to answer this, but I forget which one. I think Girdwood, that went directly to Girdwood Inc., but the 30,000 for the South Edition one was supposed to go to the planning department.
I'm not for, can you tell me which one you're looking at? Sorry, and I will try to answer your
Yeah,
question
it's
to
the
the
one that
best of my knowledge.
says Anchorage Assembly South Edition for $30,000. Line, well, I think it's like line 31.
Yes. So there are two that are written out to the Anchorage Assembly. One is section 31 and both section 31. I am not aware how to get those. I'm currently working on those. So I tried to go into, and we can speak more offline, but SAP GUI to see exactly where those are to be paid. If we give them to the assembly and then the assembly gives them out since they're awarded to the assembly. But if you have any information on that, I'd be happy to work with you guys through that.
Okay, yeah,
process.
let's follow up on that. My recollection is that I think the Midtown one and the South Edition one were supposed to go directly to the planning department, but we can, I'll get with you on that offline.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. Ms. Salatel, go ahead.
Thanks. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We finally got the audit report I've been asking for with regard to ARPA. So I looked at the page that was told probably applied to the ARPA process, page 31. You all had the link, I believe, today. And we were told we needed to appropriate, and we did, additional money so that we could do checkups basically on grant recipients, such as going and looking at their projects. That's not what this says. What this says is it was a document compliance issue. And I guess I would have expected our contractor to be able to have done that under his contract. So I'm a little bit confused what we actually appropriated the additional funding for and how it relates to the audit. And I just want to stress that when we ask for a document, getting it weeks and months later, like the appropriation is out. And now I'm like thinking there's a disconnect between what was required by the audit, which is the reason we were told we needed to appropriate those funds, and what the audit actually says. So I would like an explanation.
Sure. So in the last meeting, whenever we had spoken, which is what you're referring to, I talked about the two sides needed to ensure grant compliance. The reporting portion, which is gathering the data from the subrecipients. So we gave them $100,000, and then they physically, verbally, or via this online portal tell us we spent this $100,000 according to the grant agreement. Due to best practices, the second portion of that, which you're referring to, is the monitoring and administrating portion of that, which is certifying that those reports are correct. Example, site visits, photos, which is what you're referencing in your previous comment. This is gathered by individuals seeing firsthand and in person that the building was built, the site was.
So I understand what you're saying, but you all told us that the requirement to do that came from BDO and the audit. And that's not what the audit says. So if there is a document from BDO that says that's what's required, because it wasn't required under ARPA Tranche 1, I would like to see the document. Like, y'all have told us it's required. Show me the document where it's required.
Mr. Utrecht, Grant, did you want to respond to that, or did you want to, Ms. Espy? Is it SB? Is that okay?
I can speak to the information that I've gathered. So after finance, which is an individual in the finance department, sent me this report and walked me through, I don't know enough information about audits to be able to understand them fully. So I asked exactly so if you're looking at this document, in the context, cause, and at the very bottom, the recommendation, it says procedure should be established to monitor subrecipient compliance with audit requirements. It also says that monitoring of subrecipient compliance with the aforementioned federal regulations. From my understanding, that was told to me that this is a portion of, since this is also federal funding, that is part of federal requirements that we have to ensure that these monies are being spent appropriately. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Because so what I'm really upset about, and I am upset about this because we spent what was additional ARPA funds and we were told you guys would need to come back for more funding, was that the auditor said X, Y, and Z needed to happen. And one, we didn't have the audit at the time we had to make the appropriation. And now there's an interpretation of the audit that is what you were telling me that says these are required. And what I don't understand, and it's not going to get resolved today, is it wasn't required under ARPA Tranche 1. This isn't our first ARPA rodeo. And suddenly now it is so much more expensive to get this ARPA money out and to monitor these subrecipients. And we're using the same contractor. So it feels like a little bit of a black hole of money to ensure ARPA compliance when it wasn't an issue before. So what I would ask is whatever the analysis is and whoever's conducted the analysis, if it can be put in writing and sent and how it relates to the BDO audit finding, that would be great. And then I'm just going to stress again that, like, for me, knowing it ahead of time before being asked for the appropriation, I think is really important, because I felt really stuck when we had that appropriation. We are told it is going to hold up getting these ARPA funds out into the community, yet we didn't have the documentation that said it was required. And we're still here over a month later, I think, without the full story on why it's required and exactly what is required and why it's different from ARPA 1. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. LaFrance, did you want to go ahead?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ms. Espy. I know we've had some conversation about the Girdwood Inc. Disbursement. And I just wanted to follow up because Mike Edgington and I have also had some ongoing conversation, and he's here today. And I see up here it says DocuSign phase. And I'm sorry, I was in transit and may have missed when you talked about what that means. I know you talked about the shopping cart. How long can we expect the DocuSign phase to take, and what comes after it?
So I just want to be very transparent. I am quite new. I'm still learning all of the internal processes. So from my understanding, whenever we receive the grant agreement back, we then have to put that through DocuSign with the required documentation we received from the subrecipients. That DocuSign goes through several different departments, including risk management. They look over the insurance requirements and things that are required that are stated in the grant agreement. It also goes through legal to ensure legally everything is in that document. And then it also goes through the municipal manager. And then once that is then signed off, it moves to the next phase of the payment process, which is creating the shopping cart, submitting that information to purchasing, and then through accounts payable. And so it goes through this, from my understanding, it goes through the same process that any type of payout from the municipality of Anchorage. It's just the internal process of payment.
Thanks so much for that information. Do you have any idea on how long it will take to get through all those departments? I heard risk, I heard legal, I heard muni manager, I heard purchasing, and also accounts payable.
At this time, I have not been here long enough to be able to answer that question, but if whenever they do make it through those, I'm happy to update you if you guys have specific questions on specific subrecipients, and I can let you know exactly where it's at in the phase.
Okay, thanks so much for that. And Tuesday is my last day. And so if there's anything I can do to help, I'm happy to call folks or pester them to get them to sign in a nice way. And if I can help speed it along, I would really love to be able to get this done, or at least move it through a few departments before I go. And I really appreciate you digging in. I can only imagine coming in midstream, there's a lot to catch up on. And I really do appreciate your responsiveness and the conversation we've had over email. So thank you. And please let me know what I can do to help.
Mr. Constance in the queue, and then Ms. Stern.
Yeah, thank you. Back on the table of ARPA projects, I was wondering, the Midtown line item, help me remember, did we fund a neighborhood plan, or did we fund, I thought we funded the founding of Midtown Improvement District.
So there were between the two different ARPA tranches. One was to explore the Midtown Improvement District. That was tranche one. The other was for a district plan because Midtown does not have one. And we wanted those two things to run concurrent.
Okay. And is there progress on the first one?
Yes. And they're working with ACDA.
Right. That's who this fund looks like it's going to as well.
Yeah, and they're going to help facilitate the district planning with planning so that those are concurrently done.
Thank you. And I'll say, Ms. Espy, thank you. Sorry for the kind of abruptness of some of our questions. It's just that we've been waiting so long, you find yourself in a seat and you're present. And so, which makes you the recipient of the warmth that is maybe not so welcome, but, being present over time reduces that, because then the questions start getting answered that haven't been. So you're like kind of in the forbearance seat. And anyhow, thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Stern.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to echo what Ms. LaFrance said. I'm off this body come Tuesday, but I do notice that there are a few grants still outstanding in the Eagle River area. And so while you're doing your research for her, if you could provide me the same information, I would love to follow up in my area as well. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. LaFrance would like to be in the queue. I think after that, maybe we should try to move on, and we could, 5 of us won't be here, so it'll be up to all of you and whoever's the next chair of this committee, but it might be useful to have at least a quarterly report from you, or maybe you all want to have this next time as well. And just want to echo thanks to you. And it's clear you're engaged and you care about doing this work, and we really appreciate that. Go ahead, Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I had just wanted to mention the urgency surrounding the Girdwood Inc. disbursement is regarding housing. And it's absolutely critical that the area plan continues to move forward. The Assembly is very engaged in efforts with housing, as is the administration. So that's one of the reasons for pushing it. And I would say, this exchange here is the Assembly's way of saying thank you for being here. And as my colleagues have said, yes, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaFrance. And I neglected to note that we were joined by Nolan Clouda, the BAC chair, on the phone probably 10, 15 minutes ago. So that's probably a good segue into your update, Nolan. And thank you again, Ms. Espy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can, yeah.
Okay,
Well, I shouldn't
very
speak
good.
for
I will be brief.
Go ahead.
I will be very brief. We met on April 12th, but did not formally come to order. We did not quite have quorum. We had 5 members and needed 6 to have quorum. So we didn't, of course, take any action. But we did take the opportunity to review information. So we received an update from the Anchorage School District from Andy Ratliff, the CFO, about the passage of the FY24 budget. Received an Assembly update, also an OMB report from Ms. Peterson that was mainly going through in some detail the Q1 revisions, and especially the changes to the property tax calculations that result from it. I think this body's probably reviewed that same information. The main discussion item that we had on the agenda was about a resolution supporting the increase, or whether to pass a resolution supporting the increase of the base student allocation, the BSA, and we ended up, of course, not being able to move that forward, but also not sure that we're not sure that there's enough of an appetite to move that forward. Unfortunately, I was one of the folks that had stronger opinion about favoring a resolution to increase the BSA, but I think the temperature of the others was a little bit more mixed about it for various reasons. So the next meeting we plan to have on May 11th, we will be talking about, we're trying to get Mr. Gadamus there to talk about the real property tax issue. It was discussed a while ago with Assemblymember Voland that the idea of using real property tax increases like on inventory, or not increases, but incentives on inventory as a tool for business economic development, especially maybe for businesses that might be manufacturing. So we're going to have a discussion about that on May 11th. And we also have a few other items that are on the table for us to talk about electric vehicle impacts for a fuel excise tax revenue as kind of a longer term revenue issue for the muni. Last thing I'd mention is that with our inability to find quorum, we only have 8 members. We had 8 members currently. With the election of Ms. Brawley to the Assembly, she'll of course be resigning, and so that leaves us with 7 members. Makes it very difficult for us to achieve quorum. There's also 2 of us, I believe, on the BAC that have terms that are expiring on June 30th. And so if we're not renewed and if some of those other seats are filled, then we might fall below our numbers needed to sustain the commission. Otherwise, I can, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Any questions for Mr. Clauda? And thank you, Nolan, for that update. I don't see any questions. Thank you for your service, and sorry the board is getting a little slim. Hopefully we'll get some additional folks on there, and thank you, Anna, for your service on the BAC. Okay, I think we'll move on unless you wanted to add anything else, Mr. Clauda?
Yes, Madam Chair. I did want to mention that at the meeting, many of us expressed gratitude to yourself for your service and for your work on chairing the Budget and Finance Committee. And so I wanted to echo that we all appreciate your service as it comes to an end on the Assembly. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all of my colleagues who have been serving and will be off the body on Tuesday. We've been calling this the long goodbye. Mr. Rivera has a question now.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think with the news that came out earlier this week about the proposed sales tax from the governor, I'm wondering if this might be something that the Budget Advisory Commission could look at.
Through the chair, Mr. Rivera, that's an excellent point. Some of the implications of that might be. One thing that I'd mention is that any kind of statewide sales tax proposal, probably half of the revenue that goes to it would likely come from the municipality of Anchorage. Roughly speaking, probably about half of it would. So I think that there are big implications there as far as that goes. That is something we can raise with the members. Are there any specifics that you'd like us to think about with it or to evaluate?
Thanks. I'm not that far ahead in my thinking, but if I do come up with something, I will email you, Mr. Clauda.
Through the chair, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rivera, and thank you, Nolan. We'll move on to item 4B, which is our update on FEMA reimbursement. And Alden promised to give us a parting gift of good news.
I will attempt to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, hey, I thought, hey, okay. We did have a really good month with FEMA, as I anticipated. As you can see there, we did have 5 projects that got obligated for about $13.3 million. That took us over $100 million, $102 million at this point. That's officially obligated. We have struggled. I was hoping to have another payment from the state in there. With the president declaring the end of the disaster, the state has decided that all grant documents have to be redone with that end date rather than the open end date, and it has caused 4 to 6 week delay in us getting money. So we have at least 9 projects sitting with them right now for payment, and all I can do is wait until we got 2 of the grant documents last night. So we'll push them through our signature process as quickly as we can to get it back to them. But I had hoped for a $10 million. We have a over 9 million that's supposed to be here any day, and they've said that for 5 weeks now. So that was going to get us up to near 10. As that parting gift for those of you who are going off the board, I know, Assembly, I know you have been very interested in FEMA and FEMA obligations, specifically with COVID, for some time. So what I have done is I have highlighted 7 projects there. While the word in the system does not say obligated, they are actually completely finished. We're just waiting for them. So within the next 5 days, those 7 highlighted projects will be obligated. It's $15.3 million, and we'll bring the obligated total to $117,845. So out of our thing. So I know, like I said, a few of you are leaving, and if you really wanted to know where we were as of the time of your left, I mean, I like those words to change as quickly as possible. I do not move them until they say obligated, but I can tell you they are finished. I'm just waiting for them to update their systems. So those 7 projects got pushed through along with the other 5. So FEMA has been really working on the municipality of Anchorage's projects, and we've seen a significant amount of movement on that. So I did want to kind of give you that, the difference is really between 117.8 and that 126 that we're still marching towards. As the one slight negative that I'll give a preview for, the second project from the bottom, it ends in 871. It is a smaller project for 117,000. There is a very, very, very high likelihood that that project will not be eligible. And as you know, I'll be moving it down into that lower category below the line at some point, which, while it's not a huge dollar amount, it is twice what we've currently got out there. So next month, I'm hoping not hoping, but I'm expecting that number will be moved down. And that project has been greatly challenged, and I have fought over it to limited success. But we have had a lot of other success with big dollar amounts. They are working through several of our other projects that remain in that balance, and we still are working on trying to get the forced labor projects, those three, submitted. But we've really had an opportunity to focus on FEMA getting these projects obligated. So I've really highlighted trying to get that number through them, because that's a substantial dollar amount. So I will stop there and field any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Thurn. Wow, you have done such an amazing job over the course of many years, and it's kind of amazing to see the amount of money you're bringing into the Muni. Thank you for your commitment and your meticulous nature, and for all of this information you provided to us. It's really impressive. Ms. Alta has a question, and then after that, would you mind addressing what the thing you expect to be uncovered is, the MOA, Employee Safe Working Environment, what that is? But I'll go ahead and let Ms. Alta go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's actually a comment. So thank you, Mr. Thurn. This is really meticulous, but also thanks to everyone who kept the records during the emergency. And I know you had to go and collect everything, but this is a lot of meticulous work done by a lot of people, the Emergency Operations Center when it was running. And I think we're remiss if we don't acknowledge that this was because we did a really good job during an emergency situation. Thank you.
And through the chair, Ms. Alta, you're correct. I mean, it's not just putting these projects together, but many of these that have housing and or vaccine require a significant amount of external reporting that has to be done and kept as well. I will say that there is a lot of lessons learned, and at some point in the future, it might behoove the Muni to really do a good job of trying to remember all these things in case we have another significant emergency in the past. But yes, there's a lot of paperwork that goes in. It's, as I've said several times, it's 12,000 transactions and thousands of people that we have to know where they were every single day in order to be able to get this money. So yes.
Could you address what?
Oh,
that
yes.
was?
I'm sorry. Sure. 871. I'll just say 3 words. Remote work. Paying for employees to get computers so they could go home and work from home to do their jobs has nationwide never been an acceptable, eligible reimbursement project. FEMA has determined nationwide that while it may be best practice and minimize the spread of COVID, that is not a mask or a protective barrier, and technology has not been an acceptable item. So I put all of the technology related items into one project, and I've struggled to get them to allow any of that. But basically remote work, I think you all know what that probably meant throughout the process. That's what's in that project.
It's sort of funny, right? Like, you can pay for masks, which only mitigate the spread of COVID, or you could pay for people to not be next to each other and definitely not spread COVID. So it doesn't make much sense. But thank you for explaining that. Question from Ms. Brawley, and then I have Ms. Altel and Ms. LaFrance.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry. So just trying to catch up on the spreadsheet. So I understand the general background, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about essentially what taxpayers may be on the hook for that FEMA does not reimburse. So I understand some of these projects are outstanding. Some of them that you highlighted are going to be moving over into that category. So is it correct to say that so far there are some things outstanding, but it looks like potentially maybe as little as less than 1% of this total expenditure is going to end up not being FEMA reimbursable?
Through the chair, I don't like to give specifics and so forth until those things happen, and I try to move them. We've got 126.5 million in expenditures. We've submitted 123.1 right now. Approximately, when we add that project down, 180,000 of that 126 is going to probably at this point be non-eligible. We are having some questions and issues with some of the other projects. While I don't expect the entire projects to be declared ineligible, there might be components. I still hope for a small number, but I don't want to give a percentage on what that's going to be. The good news is, as we go back, I'm very confident that 117.8, at that number I gave, that is going to be obligated. So that is shrinking the potential gap out there from used to be tens of millions now down to a potential of 7 or 8, and I have great confidence that some of those other projects will come through as well. But I don't like giving specifics. I am concerned about 1 or 2 other projects, but I don't want to speak about them in a public setting because that defeats our ability to argue them on the municipality's behalf.
Sure. And I appreciate that you don't want to put a hard number on it at this point, but it looks like single digit percentage is probably a reasonable guess.
It's getting smaller, so we're making progress. Yes.
Ms. Alto?
Thanks. I can't let the moment pass that if we've made an investment in technology for work from home, it might support telework efforts that might help increase our municipal workforce. Thanks.
Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to say thank you to Alden for all your tenacity and hard work. I remember when I first came on the body, you were briefing us in this committee about SAP, and this is better. So thank you for all that you've done. Appreciate it.
I'm coming up on 8 years here and 4 projects. So this is getting close to the end of the 4th one. Yes, started with SAP. You are correct.
I don't see any further questions. Oh, Mr. Constant.
Since you put it that way, what other nightmares on the horizon?
Now, those are the 4 I've done. I don't know what's on the horizon. So
That
I
just
don't
raises the
anticipate-
Can you
specter of
predict the
what's
future
next.
yet?
I just want us to get our money. So that's all I'm focused on right now. And at some point, you're going to see a huge number come in from the state because they literally have all the paperwork on all those projects that are obligated. We're just waiting for their revised grant documents to be signed and work through their multi-level approval process. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think with that, we'll go to 4C. And Dan's not here, but we do have representative from Treasury. So did you want to do that? Or you, Grant? Or okay.
Dan Moore may be on the line, Madam Chair. Dan, if you're on the line, if you'd like to respond. If not, I'd be happy to.
I am here.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, so you can hear me?
Dan, can you speak up a little? You're pretty quiet, or maybe Desiree can turn you up.
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Sure can. Thank you.
Okay, great. So Treasury, each month since year end, we have basically gone into SAP and also with some revenue tracking that we do within Treasury. We've looked to see how the year end has continued to sort of solidify to sort of 100% type final number. Our overall projection for revenue is about the same as we quoted before. It's $9.8 million positive, which is good. But we do see that in the SAP records, there are some year-end accruals and some year-end property tax adjustments that have not yet been processed by the Controller Division. And so normally at this time, those entries would have been done. but we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer for that to show up in SAP. Treasury does have its own way of tracking most of these revenues, and so we actually have quite a full picture. So I think, the $9.8 million figure is good. The only thing that's going to really affect that in any significant way is what they call the year-end deferred revenue property tax adjustment. And that's done once a year by the Controller Division after they do their analysis. And some years that can swing plus or minus hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some years it can actually be in the single-digit millions of dollars. So it is not something Treasury can predict which way it'll swing and how big it'll be. But that is probably the only item left that is a big factor that could change that $9.8 million number. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Are there any questions? I don't see any. Thanks for the good news. And I guess we'll go ahead and move on to 4D. Courtney is not able to join us today. She was maybe going to try to call in, but she let us know that there really wasn't a final update on where we are at this moment. One thing that I have asked for, I don't know if 4 times is accurate, something like that, is an accounting of the alcohol tax fund balance. How did we get to 11 million? What programs did the Assembly allocate funds for that were not funded? I'm interested in where that 11 million total came from. And if we know we have 11 million, we definitely know where it came from because we had to add something up. So I just asked for that again. So if anyone is prepared to speak to that today, that would be great. If not, we're meeting tomorrow to go through alcohol tax amendments to the budget, and it would be nice to work with fund balance. So it's getting a little silly at this point. I will note there was some attachment sent around, Desiree, but that doesn't look to be, I can't tell what it is. I don't know if you all saw this. Oh, maybe Desiree will put it up, but it was an attachment about the alcohol tax buckets it says in buckets encumbered. I don't know what that means. And it doesn't, do you know what that is, Desiree? Or do you know who sent it? Grant, do you want to talk about it?
I received it from the health department this morning. It doesn't include any fire or police. Courtney could speak to that more thoroughly. I haven't had a chance to review this at all because, like I said, I got it. And with interactions with 2 of you, I wanted to get it in Desiree's hands as quickly as I could. Encumbered funds are funds essentially that are tied up in a PO that just haven't been expensed yet. So they may be waiting for the work to be done or something like that. I don't know.
Thanks, Grant. Realize you're trying to do your best without the people who have this information at their fingertips being here. So appreciate that. Sort of a recurring theme. I'm trying to absorb this. It is not very easy to understand and certainly doesn't end up with numbers that account for an $11 million, even if we took the 4.7 off that we appropriated following the 11 million announcement. That this, I don't know, maybe someone quicker at reading this can try to make sense of it, but it seems a little jumbly to me.
Is
Ms.
it
Alton.
possible to get the FY22 alcohol tax budget, have it with a column that says what actually went out the door and then what didn't get spent as appropriated? That's really what we're looking for, like side by side. So we know.
I don't have that by program. Courtney may. There is in that attachment, there was a screenshot of SAP that did, I believe, show some of that.
So I appreciate all of that, but all of that should be able to drive us toward a document like that, because what we're, I think, looking to do, and I will speak for myself, what I am looking to do when I consider first quarter fund balance amendments for the alcohol tax is, if it's a prevention bucket and there was $2 million in it and we found that only $500,000 was appropriated, it would be my intention to try to go and pick up the additional 1.5 from last year and add it to the prevention bucket for this year, and just do that line by line by line. There will be some things where it won't make sense to reappropriate right back into the program. For example, the mobile crisis team, it was significantly underspent. It does not make sense to add that money to this year's mobile crisis team because we already took care of that. But that's the type of information I need to be making informed budget amendment proposals, I guess is what I would say. And it would seem that perhaps the health department could assist with that in that they hold most of those buckets. And then similarly for public safety, the fire department and the police department should be able to take their line. Similarly, there's a prosecutor's line in there and say whether or not it was spent. My assumption is all the admin money was spent in terms of for administrating the tax, and that was fully spent. So it's just so we know what was and wasn't spent, so we can say, oh, this section didn't get the investment last year. We would like to try to jumpstart that investment this year.
Yeah, it seems like what this is just programs that were funded that were not fully used. Oh, the funding was not fully used, but obviously that only produces a $1.4 million extra or, unused funds. But that is not reflective of the, $6 to $7 million that should be left. So, oh, it's so frustrating. I think it should be really easy because there is all passed in buckets. And then you say, what of those buckets was used on what? So this is the piece of the puzzle. I don't know if I hate to punish the people who show up, but Grant, do you think you could check with Courtney and Kim on producing? Oh, Ben Bowman would like to engage. Oh, you want to check on that and get it done? Thanks, Ben. Great. That would be very helpful. And thank you, Grant, for your efforts. Anybody else want to make any comments before I move on? I guess I will say that Desiree did just send around an email that has the SAP screenshot that Grant was referring to. It's still, all of this stuff is not very reader friendly. So you kind of have to dig into what are all the positions. It doesn't have the buckets, but it has a higher balance that maybe more accurately reflects the fund balance. But it needs to be sort of organized in a way that I think we can tell. Just not to repeat too much of what Meg said, but we have buckets. We pass things within buckets. We want to know how much money is left within each bucket and what programs weren't funded. And then we want to know what's left, the total from that. So one spreadsheet, pretty simple idea. Anybody else have any thoughts that Ben can take back to Kim or Courtney or whoever he's working with? Okay. Thank you for volunteering and thank you for being here. I think we can move on. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
I actually was able to find a little good news in this, and there's a couple of columns there where it said that the estimated damages were nowhere near as high as what the estimate was, and so there'll actually be alcohol tax money left over because we're not going to be spending quite as much. And one of them was like $1 million overestimated. So anyway, it's a little good news. Thank you.
Well, and Alden's gone, but I have a feeling that maybe some of his work might have something to do with that. Yeah, Ms. Brawley, go ahead.
I'm looking forward to digging into this further and definitely reiterate what Megan Austin said about wanting that information, not just for budgeting, but I think just so that we can make sure we're accounting where these funds are going and if they're going to where they're supposed to. But I think it'd be interesting to also maybe circle back with some of these grantees later in the year and find out, for the things that weren't spent. My understanding is that a grant agreement is signed and then they actually submit basically billing for reimbursement. And so some of this could be them not using those funds for various reasons, like the no damages or less damages. But for other ones, if there is a significant gap there, it'd be interesting to hear from the organization's perspective if there were challenges using the funds or, maybe digging into kind of some of the reasons why, because I think that would help with future appropriations as well to see, what is this a reasonable amount? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brawley. Ms. Stern?
I'm wondering in particular on the line that it's line 26,000, I think, the Anchorage School District appropriation. Is there any flexibility in reappropriating that towards efforts to be able to train or anything along those lines?
I don't know.
But we could certainly reappropriate that. I am noticing that in this email that I think we all just received during this meeting, so we haven't had a chance to review it, there is a little more condensing of, it looks like there's a line that says alcohol tax, early education and prevention remaining from encumbrances 837, alcohol tax, homelessness remaining 1.4. Still not the full picture, but that's the kind of thing that would be helpful. Any other comments? Ms. Salatel?
Thank you. So what's the difference between not encumbered and remaining from encumbrances though? So I'm confused, like what's part of fund balance and what's not? That's my question. Like I understand if it wasn't encumbered in 22, it would roll over and be fund balance, but remaining from encumbrances, did it lapse? Is it still unspent? Okay.
I think it means unspent.
So it rolls into fund balance
Mhm.
then. Okay.
So I guess you would add those together. And actually adding those together gets you to $6 million. So we're sort of getting closer to these are like choose your own adventure spreadsheets. You kind of take a guess and then, yeah. Okay. Mr. Utrenka, thank you for serving as tribute today. Anybody else? Okay, any other business on 4E? Doesn't look like it. Mr. Bird, not to put you on the spot, but since you were here, did you want to give any sort of update or are you just kind of here for all the other updates?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just here for moral support, but I also wanted to let you know that it is a priority of the administration to oversee the disbursement of the ARPA funds. And I hope the committee is pleased with Ms. Espy's work. We certainly are.
I definitely am. Yeah, it's really great to have her here. So thank you. And thanks for emailing us today. That communication's really helpful. I've found you to be super communicative and helpful in this role. So for what it's worth, thank you for that. All of you who are here, you guys are really trying in a difficult time. So thank you. Anything else? I mean, we do have budget items. I don't think we need to get to that since we sort of weaved it into our other conversations. Anything else anyone wants to cover? Or are we prepared to adjourn early today? Ms. Salatel, go ahead.
Thank you. Could you put the budget amendment form back at the top of our inboxes, please? Thank you.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe we could talk a little bit about how that will go tomorrow. I did email Courtney and ask her, since she sat around the S version, if she could give a quick intro tomorrow to what changes she made. She said she wasn't planning on speaking, but I thought that would be a good, if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, a good introduction to sort of where we are, so we're all on the same landscape. I see some nodding heads. Okay, so I think we'll start with that and then go from there on our amendments. And I guess this is, we have a few minutes, so if anyone has questions about amendments or things they want to share or anything, feel free. Ms. Stern?
Yes, I would like to understand a little bit better how we can improve our bus service. And I've been doing some work with Desiree on this, and I understand there are some real priorities and extreme needs that have to happen prior to, but just in general in the process, I'm bringing these amounts forward, whether we know that we'll have the full amount or not. It's worthwhile, I think, to bring to the public the bottom line of what these things cost and how much it would take to bring them back, and also to maybe put it on a list. Can you talk a little bit about bus service, maybe in particular, or if that's on anyone else's agenda, because I would like to support it or at least have that conversation tomorrow.
Great. Yeah, I think I know you had been interested in maybe bringing forward an amendment. So maybe bringing bringing that tomorrow. And then I think how it will go is we're still waiting for some information from the administration, which hopefully we'll also get by tomorrow on the labor scrub questions that Meg asked. And I hope, Courtney, that we will get that information by tomorrow. And then we can, how I'm hoping it'll go is everyone will bring forward their amendments. We'll see how much that would cost. And then we'll see, how much we have. And then if we have time, maybe we have a conversation as a group about how we share all the, all those interests and how we make the funds we have go as far as they can.
Okay.
Mr. Rivera, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think specifically when it comes to bus service, I think it's important that we leverage funds because bus service is just expensive, period, right? It just is. And we can't expect the municipal coffers to pay for 100% of it. So whether it's through AMATS funding or whether it's through federal funding and some of the federal spending bills that I know have transportation funding included in them, and then sort of what's the leftover pie that we can pay for with municipal funds. I think that really needs to be taken into account. Thanks.
That sounds great. Mr. Peterson, did I see your hand go up earlier or were you just moving something? Okay. Playing with your phone? No problem. Okay. Meg? Just moving your finger around. Okay. People are faking me out here. Okay. Mr. Volan, if you wait long enough, right, people will sign up.
I was trying to pull it up quickly here, but in amendment number 1 to the Transportation Improvement Program, there is going to be a pilot of making bus fare free for those 65 and older or 18 and younger. I think that's really exciting. I'm not sure, and maybe Meg, yeah, that's an AMATS thing. I'm not sure what the date is on that project to go live, but I'll try to look that up and send it to you.
Great. And Mr. Myers, since you're relatively new, any questions from you or you all good with tomorrow, sort of what we're doing and anything you need to be supported and you're good? Okay. Great. I think with that, and Anna's new, of course, too, but she's been around for a week or two and she also seems to know everything about the municipality. So not true, she says. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. I think with that, we'll adjourn. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all.